The black stallion reared up on its hind legs, eyes wild with fury, hooves slashing through the dusty Arizona air as three ranch hands scrambled backward, and everyone in the town of Prescott knew that Cole Harrison's horse was going to kill someone sooner or later. Cole Harrison stood with his arms crossed, jaw tight as he watched another failed attempt to get his horse, Midnight, examined by the veterinarian. The stallion had been acting strange for weeks now, favoring his left front leg, but no one could get close enough to check what was wrong. Even Cole himself had to approach with caution, speaking in low tones and moving slow as molasses just to get the saddle on anymore. "That is one mean animal," Doc Peters said, wiping sweat from his brow as he backed toward his wagon. It was August of 1882, and the Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty street. "I cannot help what I cannot touch, Cole. You might just have to put him down if he goes fully lame." Cole's chest tightened at the thought. He had raised Midnight from a colt, found him abandoned on the range 5 years ago, barely weaned and half-starved. The horse had been his constant companion through cattle drives, through the loneliest nights under the stars, through everything. But something had changed in Midnight over the past month. The stallion had grown increasingly aggressive, snapping at other horses, kicking at stable walls, and now this complete refusal to let anyone near. "There has got to be another way," Cole said, though his voice lacked conviction. He was 26 years old, owned a modest but profitable ranch 10 miles outside of town, and he had never felt more helpless in his life. "Maybe you should try that new woman who just arrived in town," suggested Tommy, one of the ranch hands, still dusting himself off from being nearly trampled. "The one staying at the boarding house. I heard she has a way with animals." Cole had heard about her too. Everyone in Prescott had been talking about the mysterious woman who had arrived on the stagecoach 3 days ago. She dressed plain but proper, kept to herself mostly, and had no apparent family or husband. In a town where everyone knew everyone else's business, her silence had only fueled more speculation. "A woman," Doc Peters scoffed. "Tommy, if 3 grown men and a trained veterinarian cannot handle that beast, what makes you think some boarding house lady could do any better?" But Cole was desperate enough to try anything. He had already lost his father 2 years ago to pneumonia, and his mother had moved back east to live with her sister. The ranch and Midnight were all he had left of the life he had built. If there was even a chance this woman could help, he had to take it. "Where can I find her?" Cole asked. "Last I saw, she was at the general store," Tommy said. "Tall woman, dark hair, wearing a green dress. Cannot miss her." Cole nodded and headed down the main street of Prescott, his spurs jingling with each step. The town was bustling with afternoon activity. Wagons rolled past, kicking up dust. Women with parasols ducked into shops to escape the heat. A group of miners fresh from the hills were already drinking at the saloon despite the early hour. Prescott had grown considerably since the territorial capital had been established here, and it showed in the mix of rough frontier folk and more civilized townspeople trying to bring order to the wild territory. He found her exactly where Tommy said she would be, examining a bolt of fabric at the general store. Tommy had been right about one thing she was hard to miss. She stood nearly 5'8", with rich brown hair pulled back in a simple bun and eyes the color of honey. Her green dress was well made but not fancy, the kind a respectable woman of modest means would wear. She looked to be in her early 20s, and there was something about the way she held herself that suggested both strength and gentleness. Cole removed his hat as he approached. "Excuse me, miss. I wonder if I might have a word with you." She turned to face him, and he was struck by the directness of her gaze. Most women in town looked away or down when a man addressed them, but she met his eyes steadily, assessing him with intelligence that made him stand a little straighter. "You may," she said. Her voice was clear and educated, with the faintest trace of an accent he could not quite place. "Though I do not believe we have been introduced. Cole Harrison, ma'am. I own a ranch just outside of town." I heard you might have a way with animals, and I find myself in need of some unusual help. A small smile played at the corner of her lips. People talk quickly in small towns. I have been here less than a week, and already I have a reputation. I am Clara Bennett, originally from Virginia, though I have been traveling for quite some time now. Miss Bennett, Cole said, I have a horse that is injured, but he will not let anyone close enough to treat him. 3 ranch hands, a veterinarian, and myself all tried this morning. The horse nearly killed 2 men. I was told you might be able to help, though I confess I do not understand how. Clara set down the fabric she had been examining and gave him her full attention. This horse means something to you. It was not a question, but Cole answered anyway. Everything. I raised him from a colt. His name is Midnight. He is a black stallion, smart as they come, but something has changed in him. He is in pain, I know it, but he will not let me help him. Clara studied him for a long moment, and Cole had the uncomfortable feeling she was reading something in him he had not intended to show. Finally, she nodded. I will come look at your horse, Mr. Harrison, but I make no promises. Animals have their own minds, their own reasons for what they do. I understand. When would you be available? Now is as good a time as any. Let me settle my account here, and I will meet you outside. 10 minutes later, they were walking together toward the edge of town where Cole had left Midnight tied to a post in the shade. Other horses stood nearby, but they shifted nervously, ears flat, as far from the stallion as their ropes would allow. Midnight stood with his head low, weight shifted off his left front leg, but his ears swiveled constantly, alert for any threat. Tell me about him, Clara said as they approached. How did you find him? Cole kept his voice low as they walked, not wanting to spook the horse. Found him on the range 5 years ago. He was maybe 4 months old, wandering alone. His mother must have died or abandoned him. He was thin, scared, but there was something in his eyes even then. A fire. I spent weeks gaining his trust, feeding him by hand, letting him come to me on his own terms. When he finally did, it was like we understood each other. He has been my partner ever since. And when did he start acting differently? About a month ago. Gradual at first. He started pinning his ears back when the other ranch hands came near. Then he kicked out at my foreman, which he had never done before. This past week has been the worst. He is in pain, I am certain of it, the way he holds that front leg. But he has built a wall around himself, and I do not know how to break through it. They were close now, maybe 15 feet away. Midnight's head came up sharply, nostrils flaring. His eyes rolled white, and he let out a warning snort that made the other horses pull against their ties. Stay back, Clara said softly. Let me go alone, Miss Bennett. I do not think that is wise. He could seriously hurt you. She turned to him with that same steady gaze. Mr. Harrison, you asked for my help. Now let me give it. Please stay here. Against every instinct, Cole remained where he was. He watched as Clara walked forward slowly, her hands loose at her sides, her posture relaxed. She did not look directly at Midnight but kept her gaze slightly averted, non-threatening. She was humming something, too low for Cole to make out the melody, but he could see the sound carried to the horse's ears. They swiveled forward, focused on her, Midnight's muscles tensed. His back leg cocked, ready to kick. He pulled against the rope, head tossing. Clara kept walking, kept humming, did not change her pace or her posture. When she was 10 feet away, the stallion let out a sound Cole had never heard him make before, something between a whimper and a challenge. Clara stopped. She stood there, not moving forward or back, just being present. Her humming continued, that low, soothing sound. She began speaking, her voice so soft Cole could barely hear it. I know, she said. I know you are hurting. I know you are scared. I know you do not understand why no one can fix this pain inside you, but building walls will not make it better. Pushing everyone away will not heal what is broken. The stallion's ears flicked forward and back, forward and back. He snorted again, but this time it was different, less aggressive, more uncertain. Clara took another step forward, then another. Midnight watched her with what Cole could only describe as fascination. His head lowered slightly. His weight shifted. When Clara was within arm's reach, she slowly extended her hand, palm up, fingers relaxed. Cole held his breath. This was the moment when Midnight would either strike or flee. The stallion's lips pulled back, showing teeth. His neck arched, but Clara did not flinch. She held her ground, hand extended, patient as stone. Then something extraordinary happened. Midnight's head dropped. His nostrils extended toward her hand. He sniffed once, twice, 3 times. Then, with a gentleness that made Cole's throat tighten, the stallion pressed his velvet muzzle into Clara's palm and held it there. Clara's other hand came up slowly, and she began stroking Midnight's neck. The stallion's eyes half closed. A shudder ran through his entire body, and then he seemed to deflate, all that aggressive tension draining away. Clara continued touching him, murmuring words Cole could not hear, and Midnight stood there accepting her touch like a foal with its mother. Cole felt something shift in his chest. He had worked with horses his entire life, had seen skilled trainers and experienced wranglers, but he had never witnessed anything like this. It was not just technique or knowledge. It was something deeper, something that spoke to a connection he did not fully understand but could not deny. Clara ran her hands down Midnight's shoulder toward the injured leg. The stallion tensed slightly but did not pull away. When her fingers reached his knee, he flinched and tried to lift the leg. Clara made a small sound, soothing, and continued her examination. After several minutes, she straightened and looked back at Cole. "You can come closer now," she said. But slowly. Cole approached, amazed when Midnight only watched him with calm eyes instead of the wild fury from before. Clara's hand remained on the horse's neck, a grounding presence. "There is a stone wedged deep in his hoof," Clara said. "It has been there for some time, I think, long enough to cause infection and significant pain. The reason he has been so aggressive is that he is trying to protect himself from anyone touching it. Every time someone reached for that leg, he expected more pain." Cole felt like a fool. "A stone? We shoe him regularly. How did we miss it? It is lodged high in the frog, hidden unless you know exactly where to look. And with him fighting everyone who tried to examine him, it is no wonder it went unnoticed." Clara looked at him seriously. "But it needs to come out immediately. The infection could spread. Do you have tools, antiseptic?" "Everything I need back at the ranch." "Can you keep him calm long enough for me to work on him?" "I think so, but we should do it there where you have proper space and light. Can you ride him?" Cole moved to Midnight's other side, relieved when the stallion allowed him to check the saddle and stirrups. "He has always let me ride him, even with all this going on. It is just the touching, the handling he has been fighting." "Then let us go. I can ride double with you if needed, or I can rent a horse from the livery." The thought of Clara pressed against his back for the 10-mile ride to his ranch sent an unexpected warmth through Cole's chest. He pushed the feeling aside. This was business, nothing more. She was helping his horse. "We can double up," he said, keeping his voice neutral. "It will be faster than waiting for another horse." He mounted first, then extended his hand to help Clara up. She accepted with practiced ease, settling behind him with her skirt arranged as modestly as possible. Her arms came around his waist, and Cole tried not to notice how perfectly she seemed to fit there. They rode out of town at an easy pace to spare Midnight's injured leg. The ranch hands who had witnessed the morning's chaos stared in open amazement as they passed. Word would spread fast about the woman who had tamed Cole Harrison's killer horse with nothing but a gentle touch and soft words. The ride gave Cole time to think. Clara sat behind him, her presence both comfortable and unsettling. She did not chatter nervously like some women might have. Instead, she seemed content with the silence, occasionally adjusting her grip as they navigated the rough trail, but otherwise simply being present. "How did you learn to work with animals like that?" Cole finally asked as his ranch came into view over the next rise. "My father was a veterinarian," Clara said. "He died when I was 16. Before then, he took me on his calls, taught me everything he knew. Animals have always made more sense to me than people. They do not lie about what they want or what they feel." They are honest in their fear, their pain, their joy. If you learn to listen, really listen, they will tell you everything you need to know. Why did you leave Virginia? There was a long pause. Cole felt her grip tighten slightly, then relax. That is a longer story for another time, Mr. Harrison. Let us focus on your horse first. He wanted to press, curious about this woman who had appeared in Prescott alone and mysterious, but he respected her boundary. Everyone had things they preferred to keep private, especially out here where people often came west to escape their past. His ranch spread out before them, modest but well-maintained. The main house was sturdy timber and stone, built to last through Arizona's temperature swings. Barns and corrals dotted the property, and Cole could see cattle grazing in the distance. 3 more ranch hands were working near the stables, and they all stopped to stare as Cole rode up with an unfamiliar woman, and Midnight moving calmly beneath them both. "Tommy," Cole called as he dismounted, "bring my tools from the tack room, the full kit, and clean water, antiseptic, bandages. Quickly now." He helped Clara down, his hands lingering at her waist perhaps a moment longer than necessary. Their eyes met and something passed between them, some unspoken recognition that made Cole's heart beat faster. Clara turned to Midnight, her hand finding the horse's neck again with the ease of long familiarity. "Where would you like to do this?" "In the barn." "Better light, and if he panics, the stall will contain him better than out here in the open." They led Midnight into the barn, into a large foaling stall Cole used for injured animals. The afternoon sun slanted through the slats, providing good visibility. Tommy arrived with the supplies, still staring at Clara like she had performed some kind of miracle. "Thank you, Tommy," Cole said. "That will be all." When they were alone, Cole knelt by Midnight's injured leg. Clara positioned herself at the stallion's head, her hands gentle on his face, her voice a continuous stream of soothing sounds. Cole lifted the hoof carefully, and for the first time in weeks, Midnight allowed it without fighting. The stone was exactly where Clara said it would be, wedged deep in the sensitive tissue. Cole worked carefully, using a thin pick to dislodge it without causing more damage. Midnight shifted and snorted, but Clara's presence kept him calm. When the stone finally came free, followed by a rush of foul-smelling discharge, Cole heard Clara make a soft sound of sympathy. "Poor thing," she murmured to the horse. "That must have felt terrible, but it is out now, it is out." Cole cleaned the wound thoroughly, applied antiseptic that made Midnight dance nervously, then packed and bandaged the hoof. The whole process took nearly half an hour, and by the end, he was sweating despite the shade of the barn. But when he finished and stood, wiping his hands, he felt lighter than he had in weeks. "He will need the bandage changed daily," Cole said. "The infection should clear in a week or so, and I owe you more than I can say, Miss Bennett. You saved his life." Clara smiled, and it transformed her face from merely pretty to genuinely beautiful. "He saved his own life by trusting me enough to let me help. Some creatures, some people, they would rather suffer than accept vulnerability. He was brave to let down his guard." She was not just talking about the horse. Cole could hear it in her voice, see it in her eyes. Whatever had brought Clara Bennett to Arizona, it had taught her something about walls and pain and the cost of pushing everyone away. "At least let me pay you for your time," Cole said. "And it is getting late. Stay for dinner. I am not much of a cook, but I can manage something edible. Then I will take you back to town." Clara hesitated, and Cole could see her weighing propriety against practicality. A single woman dining alone with a single man could start talk, even out on a ranch with ranch hands around to play chaperone. "I should return to town," she said finally, "but I would not refuse the ride and perhaps some water before we go, of course. Come up to the house." Cole's home was simple but comfortable. He had built much of it himself over the past 5 years, expanding as his fortunes improved. The main room held a kitchen, dining area, and sitting space with a large stone fireplace. 2 bedrooms and a washroom completed the house. It was meant for a family, though Cole had been alone here since his father's death. He poured water from the pitcher, adding a slice of lemon from the tree he had planted out back. Clara accepted the glass gratefully and drank deeply. "You have a good place here," she said, looking around. "A person could build a real life in a place like this. That is the plan, or it was. Sometimes I wonder if I am just going through the motions, keeping busy so I do not have to think about how quiet it gets." The words surprised him. He was not usually given to such honesty with strangers. But Clara had a way of making him want to open up, to share the thoughts he usually kept locked away. "I understand that feeling," Clara said quietly. "The busyness that keeps the loneliness at bay. I have been doing the same thing for 2 years now, ever since my father died. I have been moving from place to place, never staying long enough to put down roots or form real connections. It is easier that way, safer." "What brought you to Prescott?" Clara set down her glass and moved to the window, looking out at the land stretching toward the distant mountains. "I heard there was work for someone with veterinary knowledge, and I liked the name. Prescott. It sounds solid, permanent. I thought perhaps it was time to stop running, to try staying in one place for a while. But old habits are hard to break. I have been here less than a week, and already I am thinking about the next town, the next place. It is what I do. I keep moving so nothing can catch up to me." Cole moved to stand beside her at the window. "What are you running from, Clara?" She turned to face him, and he was struck again by the depth of feeling in those honey-colored eyes. "The same thing you are, I suspect. The fear that if I stop moving, stop building walls, I will have to face how much I have lost, how alone I really am." The honesty in her words cut through every defense Cole had built around his heart. He saw himself reflected in her admission, saw the same loneliness and fear that had been his constant companion since his father died and his mother left. He had the ranch, had the work, had midnight, but no real human connection, no one to share the burdens or the joys with. "You are not alone," he said, surprising himself. "Not anymore, not if you do not want to be." Clara's breath caught. "Mr. Harrison, we just met. You do not know anything about me. I know enough. I know you are kind. I know you have a gift with animals that speaks to patience and understanding. I know you are brave enough to approach a dangerous horse that 3 grown men feared. And I know that when you are near, I do not feel quite so alone." A flush crept up Clara's cheeks. "Cole, I cannot make promises. My life has been uncertain for so long, I do not know if I remember how to stay in one place." "Then do not promise forever, just promise today. Have dinner with me tonight, let me get to know you better, and tomorrow we can decide about tomorrow." Clara studied him for a long moment, and Cole could see her fighting with herself, weighing risk against possibility. Finally, she smiled. "Just dinner. And we tell each other the truth, no matter how difficult." "The truth," Cole agreed. "I will start. I am terrified that I am turning into my father, a man who loved his ranch more than he loved people, who died with calluses on his hands and no one to mourn him but a son who barely knew him. I do not want that life, but I do not know how to build anything different." Clara's expression softened. "I am terrified that I am too broken to let anyone close. My father was everything to me, and when he died, it felt like the world ended. I left Virginia to escape the memories, to escape the man I was supposed to marry because I could not bear the thought of replacing my father's love with someone else's. I have been running ever since, convincing myself I prefer to be alone. But the truth is, I am just scared." The vulnerability in her confession made something crack open in Cole's chest. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. Her fingers were long and capable, marked with small scars from years of working with animals. She did not pull away. "What if we were scared together?" he asked. "What if we stopped running, stopped building walls just for a little while, see what happens?" "That sounds dangerous," Clara said, but she was smiling. "The best things usually are." They stood there as the afternoon light shifted toward evening, hands clasped. 2 people who had been alone for too long, finding unexpected connection. Outside, ranch hands called to each other as they finished the day's work. Cattle lowed in the distance. Somewhere, a horse whinnied, and Cole liked to think it was midnight, finally at peace. Cole did cook dinner that evening, and while it was nothing fancy beans, salt pork, bread, and canned peaches, Clara ate with appreciation. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their childhoods, their families, their dreams and disappointments. Cole learned that Clara had been engaged to a banker's son in Virginia, a match her father had approved of before his death. But after the funeral, Clara had realized she was agreeing to marry a man she did not love, to live a life that would have made her miserable, all because it was expected. "So I left," Clara said, pushing peach juice around her plate with her fork. "I took what money my father had left me, bought a ticket west, and never looked back. Everyone thought I was crazy. A respectable young woman does not travel alone, does not reject a good marriage prospect, does not throw away security for uncertainty. But I could not breathe there anymore. I felt like I was drowning in expectations and grief." "That took courage," Cole said. "Most people would have taken the safe path, or most people are braver than me. Running away is not exactly heroic. You did not run away, you ran toward something. Toward possibility, toward a life you could choose. That is different." Clara met his eyes across the table, and Cole saw gratitude there and something warmer. "Thank you for understanding. Most people do not." They cleared the dishes together, working in companionable silence. It felt natural, easy, like they had been doing this for years instead of hours. When the kitchen was clean, Cole knew he should take Clara back to town, but he was reluctant to end the evening. "Would you like to see Midnight before we go?" he asked. "Check how he is doing." They walked to the barn through the warm Arizona night. The sky was brilliant with stars, the Milky Way a river of light overhead. Clara tilted her head back, taking it in. "I never get tired of western skies," she said. "They are so much bigger than back east. Makes you feel both small and significant at the same time." In the barn, they found Midnight resting comfortably in his stall, weight still off the injured hoof, but no longer showing signs of distress. When he saw Clara, his ears pricked forward, and he moved to the stall door with an eagerness Cole had not seen in weeks. Clara laughed, a sound like water over stones, and reached up to stroke the stallion's face. "Hello, handsome, feeling better?" Midnight pushed his head into her chest, and Clara wrapped her arms around him, her cheek pressed to his neck. The horse's eyes half closed in contentment, and Cole felt a surge of something he could not quite name. Affection, certainly. Gratitude. But also something deeper, something that felt dangerously like the beginning of love. "He trusts you completely," Cole said. "That is rare for him, for both of us, actually." Clara looked at him over Midnight's neck. "Trust is built, not given. You have to earn it day by day, moment by moment." "It takes time." "We have time," Cole said. "If you will stay." "I meant what I said earlier, Clara. You do not have to keep running. You could build a life here in Prescott. Whether that includes me or not is up to you, but at least stop long enough to see what this place has to offer." Clara released Midnight and moved closer to Cole. They stood in the lantern-lit barn, hay dust drifting in the golden light, the smell of horses and leather surrounding them. She reached up and touched his face, her palm gentle against his bearded jaw. "I want to stay," she whispered. "God help me, I have known you for less than a day and I want to stay, but I am scared, Cole. I am scared I will run again when things get difficult. I am scared I will let you down." Cole covered her hand with his, holding it against his face. "Then we will face that fear together." "I am scared too, Clara. I am scared I do not know how to love someone properly, that I am too much like my father, too wrapped up in work and the ranch to make room for anything else. But I want to try. With you, I want to try." Clara's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Just dinner, you said." "Just today. And now today is almost tomorrow, so what do you say, another day and then another after that?" "Yes," Clara breathed. "Yes, I will stay, at least for a while, at least long enough to see where this leads." Cole lowered his head slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When his lips met hers, it was gentle, questioning, a promise rather than a demand. Clara rose on her toes, kissing him back with a sweetness that made his heart ache. It was a first kiss, Tentative and careful, but underneath was a current of feeling that hinted at something powerful waiting to be discovered. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Cole rested his forehead against Clara's, his hands on her waist, anchoring himself. "I should get you back to town," he said reluctantly. "People will talk if I keep you out too late." "Let them talk," Clara said with a smile. "I have never much cared for gossip," but she was right and Cole knew it. Prescott was a small town, and Clara's reputation mattered, especially if she planned to stay and build a life here. Reluctantly, they separated, and Cole saddled a gentler mare for the ride back since Midnight needed rest. They rode through the night side by side, their horses close enough that occasionally Cole's leg brushed against Clara's. They talked more, sharing small details and large dreams, learning the contours of each other's thoughts. By the time they reached the boarding house in town, Cole felt like he had known Clara for years instead of hours. He helped her dismount, his hands lingering at her waist. "When can I see you again?" "Tomorrow," Clara suggested. "I should check on Midnight's hoof, change the bandage." That is the respectable excuse anyway. And the real reason. Because I want to see you again. Because for the first time in 2 years I am not thinking about the next town, I am thinking about tomorrow and you are in it. Cole grinned, feeling lighter than he had in months. "I will pick you up mid-morning. We can spend the day at the ranch. I will put you to work, make it look proper." "I look forward to it." Cole waited until Clara was safely inside before riding back toward his ranch. The night was still warm, the stars still brilliant overhead, but everything felt different now. The loneliness that had been his constant companion had retreated, replaced by something he barely dared name: hope. The next morning, Cole was up before dawn, his usual routine disrupted by an eagerness he had not felt in years. He checked on Midnight first, pleased to see the stallion moving more comfortably. The infection would take time to heal completely, but already the worst seemed to be passing. He worked through morning chores with an efficiency born of impatience, then cleaned up and hitched the wagon for the ride to town. His ranch hands noticed his good mood and exchanged knowing glances, but Cole did not care. Let them speculate. He had spent too many years being careful, being controlled, being alone. If he was making a fool of himself over a woman he had just met, so be it. Clara was waiting on the boarding house porch when he arrived, wearing a simple cotton dress in pale blue and a wide-brimmed hat to protect against the sun. She carried a small bag, and when Cole raised an eyebrow in question, she smiled. "Supplies," she said. "I stopped by the general store early this morning. Better antiseptic than what you had, and some herbs that will help with the infection. If I am going to play veterinarian, I should do it properly." The ride back to the ranch was comfortable, conversation flowing easily. Clara asked about the cattle operation, and Cole found himself explaining the business side of ranching, something he rarely discussed with anyone. Most people either knew already or did not care to know. But Clara listened with genuine interest, asking intelligent questions that showed she understood the challenges and opportunities. "Have you thought about expanding?" she asked. "You have good grazing land, access to water. You could increase your herd considerably." "I have thought about it," Cole admitted. "But it would require hiring more hands, building more infrastructure, and I suppose I have been reluctant to grow too fast, too big. I do not want to end up like some of these big ranchers who lose touch with the land and the animals, who care more about profit than the quality of life." "That is admirable. There is something to be said for staying a size you can manage well rather than expanding beyond your capacity to care." They worked together that morning, Clara tending to Midnight while Cole handled other chores. It felt natural to have her there, to look up from mucking stalls and see her examining a horse, to hear her humming those wordless tunes that seemed to calm even the most skittish animals. Around midday, they took a break, sitting in the shade of the barn with cold water and sandwiches. Cole's nearest neighbor, an older rancher named Hank Peterson, rode up with a young colt in tow. "Heard you had someone who knows horses," Hank said without preamble. He was a gruff man in his 60s, weathered by decades under the Arizona sun. This colt has been limping for 3 days, cannot figure out what is wrong with him. Clara stood and approached the colt slowly, speaking softly. The young horse was nervous, dancing at the end of his lead, but Clara's calm presence settled him. She ran her hands down his legs, checked his hooves, examined his gait as Hank walked him in a circle. "He has a strained tendon in his right hind leg," Clara said finally. "Not serious, but it needs rest and cold compresses. Keep him stalled for 2 weeks, walk him gently for 10 minutes twice a day, but no running, no rough play. The tendon should heal on its own." Hank stared at her. "You figured that out in 5 minutes. I have been puzzling over it for days." "Sometimes a fresh set of eyes helps," Clara said diplomatically after Hank left, profusely grateful and promising to spread the word about Clara's skills. Cole laughed. "You are going to end up busier than the town veterinarian if you are not careful." "Would that be so bad?" "I need to make a living somehow. The money my father left will not last forever." "You could set up a practice. There is certainly need for it. Doc Peters is getting older and he only handles large livestock anyway." "Someone who understands horses, dogs, smaller animals, there would be plenty of work." Clara looked thoughtful. "I would need a place, equipment, but it is possible if I were staying, if this becomes home." "Is it becoming home?" She met his eyes, and the vulnerability there made Cole's chest tighten. "I think it might be, which terrifies me." Cole set aside his sandwich and took her hand. "Clara, I know we have only known each other a short time. I know this is fast, maybe too fast. But I cannot pretend I do not feel what I am feeling. You make me think about the future in ways I have not in years. You make me want things I had given up on." "What things?" "A partner. Someone to build a life with, children maybe someday. Not just going through the motions, but actually living, actually being happy. When I look at you, I see possibility, I see hope, and it scares me as much as it does you." Clara squeezed his hand. "I feel it too, this pull between us. Like maybe we have been alone long enough, maybe the universe decided to throw us together and see what happens. But I need you to understand, Cole. I have spent 2 years protecting myself by never staying anywhere long enough to care. I do not know if I can break that pattern. I do not know if I am brave enough. You are the bravest person I know. You faced down midnight when 3 men ran. You left everything familiar to chase an uncertain future. You are still here, even though running would be easier. That is courage, Clara. That is strength." Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks, and she wiped them away impatiently. "I want to believe that. I want to believe I can stay, can build something real here. With you. But what if I let you down? What if I wake up one morning and the fear is stronger than the hope and I run? Then I will find you and bring you back, or I will let you go if that is what you really need. But either way, I am willing to take that risk. You are worth the risk, Clara." She leaned into him, and Cole wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. They sat like that for a long time, 2 people who had been alone learning what it meant to not be alone anymore. The next few weeks fell into a pattern that felt as natural as breathing. Clara would come to the ranch most days, sometimes bringing patients sent by word of mouth, sometimes just to help with the regular work. She officially established a veterinary practice in a small office space in town, and within days, she had more clients than she could easily handle. Animals responded to her in ways they did not with anyone else, and their owners responded to her knowledge and gentle competence. Cole found excuses to be in town whenever Clara was there. He would stop by her office with supplies she might need, or to consult about ranch matters that did not really require consulting. They had dinner together several times a week, sometimes at the ranch, sometimes at the small restaurant in town where they could be seen maintaining proper decorum even as their knees touched under the table, and their eyes said things their voices could not in public. Midnight recovered completely, and the bond between the stallion and Clara only grew stronger. The horse would whinny when he saw her approaching, would follow her around the corral like an oversized puppy. Cole pretended to be jealous, and Clara would laugh and kiss his cheek and tell him there was room in her heart for both of them. 6 weeks after they met, on a Sunday afternoon when the work was done and they had the ranch to themselves, Cole took Clara riding. They headed into the hills behind his property, following a trail he knew well. The September weather had cooled slightly, making the ride pleasant. Saguaro cacti stood like sentinels on the hillsides, and the late afternoon sun painted everything gold and amber. They stopped at a high point that overlooked the ranch and the valley beyond. Cole dismounted and helped Clara down, then spread a blanket on the ground. They sat side by side, watching hawks circle in the thermal currents. "I need to tell you something," Clara said, her voice quiet. "I wrote to Virginia. To my mother, to the man I was supposed to marry. I told them I was not coming back, that I had found a place I wanted to stay, reasons to put down roots." Cole's heart beat faster. "What did you tell them about those reasons?" "I told them about Prescott, about my practice. About the sky and the space and the feeling that I could breathe here. And I told them about you, about a rancher who makes me laugh, who challenges me, who sees me for who I am and not who everyone thinks I should be." "What did they say?" "I do not know yet. I only posted the letters yesterday." "But it does not matter, really. Their approval or disapproval does not change what I know to be true. I am not running anymore, Cole. I am staying here with you if you will have me." Cole turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "Clara Bennett, I have been waiting for you my whole life. I just did not know it until you walked up to midnight and he nuzzled your hand. You changed everything in that moment. You showed me that walls can come down, that trust is possible, that being alone is a choice and not a sentence. I love you. I think I have loved you since that first day, and I will love you for whatever days we have ahead." Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I love you too. It is the most terrifying and wonderful thing I have ever felt. I love your steadiness, your kindness, the way you care for your animals and your land. I love how you listen, really listen, and how you make me believe I can be the person I want to be instead of the person fear has made me. I love you, Cole Harrison, and I want to build a life with you." Cole kissed her then, deep and passionate, pouring everything he felt into the contact. Clara kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "Marry me," Cole said. "I know it is fast. I know people will talk, but I do not want to wait. I have wasted too many years being alone. I want to start our life together now." "Yes," Clara said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you as soon as possible. Tomorrow, if we could," Cole laughed, joy bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. "We probably need a few days at least. Need to talk to the preacher, file the paperwork, let people know. Then a few days, but not longer. I have run from commitment for 2 years, Cole. Now that I have decided to stay, I do not want to wait any longer than necessary." They stayed on that hillside as the sun set, making plans and promises. They would marry in 2 weeks, just a simple ceremony with whatever townspeople wanted to attend. Clara would move to the ranch, and they would build her practice from there, with clients coming out or Clara traveling to them. They talked about expanding the ranch slowly, about building a family when the time was right, about growing old together under the big Arizona sky. When they finally rode back to the ranch in the gathering dusk, Cole felt like a different man than he had been 2 months ago. The loneliness had lifted, replaced by a sense of partnership and possibility. He was no longer just going through the motions, working to fill empty hours. He had someone to build toward, someone to share the work and the joy with. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparations. Clara gave notice at the boarding house and began moving her belongings to the ranch, though propriety demanded she sleep in town until after the wedding. Cole's ranch hands helped him add a room to the house, a space where Clara could see patients and store her veterinary supplies. They built shelves and cabinets, added a separate entrance so people could come for animal care without disturbing the main house. Word spread through Prescott about the upcoming wedding, and if there was gossip about the speed of the courtship, there was also genuine happiness. Cole was well-liked and respected, and Clara had quickly earned the town's admiration for her skill and gentle manner. People brought gifts, offered help, seemed genuinely pleased that two solitary people had found each other. On a Saturday morning in late September 1882, Cole Harrison and Clara Bennett were married in the small church in Prescott. The building was packed with ranchers, townspeople, miners, and everyone else who could squeeze in. Clara wore a dress of ivory silk, simple but elegant, with her dark hair pinned up and a spray of wildflowers in her hand. Cole wore his best suit, new boots, and a smile he could not have suppressed if he tried. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. When the preacher asked Cole if he would take Clara as his wife, his "I do" rang out clear and firm. When Clara said the same, her voice carried such conviction that several women in the congregation dabbed at their eyes. They kissed as husband and wife, and the church erupted in applause. They walked back down the aisle hand in hand, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, ready to face whatever came next together. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up under the open sky and more food than two people could eat in a month. There was music and dancing, laughter and toasts. Cole danced with his new wife, holding her close as the sun set and lanterns were lit, feeling like the luckiest man in the territory. Late in the evening, when most of the guests had departed and only close friends remained, Clara took Cole's hand and led him toward the barn. Midnight stood at the fence, watching them approach. When Clara reached up to stroke his face, the stallion nuzzled her hand gently, just as he had that first day. "Thank you," Clara whispered to the horse. "If you had not brought us together, I might still be running." Cole wrapped his arms around his wife from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Do you think he knew? That day when he finally let you close, do you think he was matchmaking?" Clara laughed. "I think he was in pain and desperate, but maybe that is how the best things happen. When we are desperate enough to drop our defenses and let someone in." They stood there in the warm night, the sounds of celebration fading behind them, the horses' steady breathing a counterpoint to their own. It was a moment of perfect peace, perfect rightness, the beginning of the life they would build together. Their first year of marriage was not without challenges. The ranch demanded constant work, and Clara's practice grew busier than either had anticipated. There were hard days and disagreements, moments when old fears resurfaced and Clara would grow quiet, her eyes distant, and Cole knew she was fighting the urge to run. During those times, he would simply be present, patient, giving her space to work through her feelings while making it clear he was not going anywhere. Slowly, the fears came less frequently. Clara's roots grew deeper into the Arizona soil. She formed genuine friendships with other women in town, joined the church committee, became a vital part of the community. Cole watched her bloom, becoming more confident, more settled, more at peace with each passing month. They worked together to expand the ranch modestly, adding cattle and improving the land. Clara's veterinary income supplemented the ranch, giving them financial stability and freedom. But more than the work or the money, they had each other. After long days, they would sit on the porch and watch the sunset, sharing the small details of their days. At night, they would lie in bed talking until sleep claimed them, finding comfort in the sound of each other's breathing. In the spring of 1883, Clara discovered she was pregnant. She told Cole one evening after dinner, her hand resting on her still flat stomach, her eyes uncertain. They had talked about children, wanted them, but the reality was suddenly immediate and frightening. "A baby," Cole breathed, kneeling before her, his hands covering hers on her belly. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Clara asked. "Truly happy. I know we said we wanted this, but now that it is real, I am terrified," Cole admitted. "I have no idea how to be a father. I barely knew my own father. What if I get it wrong? What if I am not enough?" Clara cupped his face in her hands. "Then we will be terrified together. We will make mistakes together. And we will love this child together so much that even when we get things wrong, it will still feel loved and safe. That is all we can promise." Cole kissed her, slow and deep, tasting salt from tears he had not realized he was crying. I love you, Clara Harrison, and I already love our baby. We are going to be okay. Better than okay. We are going to be a family. The pregnancy was not easy. Clara struggled with sickness in the early months, and the Arizona heat made the later months uncomfortable. But Cole was attentive and loving, taking over more of the practice work when he could, making sure Clara rested, bringing her cold drinks and rubbing her swollen feet in the evenings. His ranch hands stepped up too, taking on extra duties without complaint, pleased to help on a cold December night in 1883. During one of Arizona's rare winter storms, Clara went into labor. Cole rode through the freezing rain to fetch the midwife, his heart in his throat, terrified something would go wrong. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next morning. Cole paced in the main room, listening to Clara's cries, feeling helpless and scared. Finally, as dawn broke, he heard a new sound. A baby's cry, strong and indignant, protesting its entrance into the world. The midwife emerged, smiling. "You have a son, Mr. Harrison, a healthy boy, and your wife did beautifully. She is tired but well." Cole rushed into the bedroom to find Clara propped up against pillows, her hair damp with sweat, her face exhausted but radiant. In her arms was a tiny bundle, and as Cole approached, she pulled the blanket back to reveal a red-faced, dark-haired baby boy. "Meet your son," Clara said softly. "Meet James Cole Harrison." Cole sat carefully on the edge of the bed, staring down at the baby with wonder. James, after Clara's father, Cole felt his throat tighten with emotion. "He is perfect," Cole whispered. "You are perfect. I cannot believe he is ours. Believe it. We made him, and now we get to raise him. We are parents, Cole. We have a family." Cole carefully took his son, marveling at the weight of him, the reality of this tiny life they had created. James's eyes opened briefly, unfocused but searching, and Cole felt something shift in his chest, an expansion of his capacity to love that he had not known was possible. "I promise you," Cole said to his son, his voice thick with feeling, "I promise I will be better than my father was. I will be present. I will tell you I love you every day. I will teach you about the land and the animals, but I will also teach you about kindness and honor and how to treat people with respect. I will not be perfect, but I will always try. That is my promise to you." Clara reached up and touched Cole's face, wiping away tears he had not realized were falling. "He is lucky to have you as a father. We both are." James Harrison grew strong and healthy, and watching Clara with their son only deepened Cole's love for his wife. She was patient and attentive, balancing her work with motherhood in ways that impressed everyone who knew her. She would carry James with her on local calls, the baby strapped to her back in a sling, content to sleep or watch as his mother worked with animals. Midnight was fascinated by the baby. The stallion would hang his head over the fence whenever Clara brought James outside, sniffing the child gently, allowing tiny hands to grab at his mane. It was as if the horse understood that this small human was precious, deserving of protection. "He is a good judge of character," Clara would say, watching horse and child interact. "He always has been." As James grew from infant to toddler, the Harrison Ranch prospered. Cole's careful management and Clara's supplemental income allowed them to weather the economic ups and downs that affected many ranchers. They were not rich, but they were comfortable, secure, able to provide for their family and plan for the future. In 1885, Clara became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect, perhaps because she was not as frightened. On a warm June evening, she gave birth to a daughter, whom they named Margaret Grace, after Cole's mother who had passed away that spring back east. Margaret was different from James, quieter, more observant, with her mother's honey-colored eyes and a thoughtful nature that showed itself even in infancy. James, now 18 months old, was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to touch her, help with her, be near her. "He is going to be protective of her," Clara predicted, watching their son gently pat Margaret's head. "She will never lack for someone looking out for her." "Like her mother," Cole said, pulling Clara close. Strong women seemed to be my fate. I would not have it any other way. The years passed in the way years do when life is full and good. There were hard times, certainly. Droughts that stressed the cattle and the land. Illness that swept through the territory one winter, claiming several townspeople before it burned itself out. The constant demands of ranch life and Clara's practice, leaving them both exhausted more often than not. But there were far more good times. Watching James take his first steps, then his first ride on a gentle mare. Margaret's first words, first laugh, the way she would follow her father around the ranch, mimicking his gestures. Family dinners around the table, the four of them sharing the day's events. Evenings on the porch, James and Margaret playing in the yard while Cole and Clara sat close, hands clasped, watching their children and counting their blessings. On their 5th wedding anniversary in September of 1887, Cole took Clara back to the hillside where he had proposed. They left the children with trusted friends in town and spent the afternoon alone, something that happened rarely with 2 young children and busy lives. "You remember what you said that day?" Cole asked as they sat on the same blanket, looking out at the same view. "That you were terrified, but you wanted to stay anyway. I remember. I also remember thinking I was probably making a terrible mistake, letting myself fall in love with you so quickly. Every instinct told me to run." "What made you stay?" Clara thought for a moment. "Hope. You made me hope that life could be different, better than I had imagined. You made me believe that staying was braver than running, and I wanted to be brave for you, for myself. I am glad I did. I am glad I took the risk. So am I. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Clara. You and our children, I cannot imagine life without you. You will not have to. I am not going anywhere. This is home. You are home. Finally, after all those years of running, I found where I belong." They made love on that hillside, slow and tender, reaffirming their commitment to each other. Afterward, they lay in each other's arms, watching clouds drift across the sky, perfectly content. As the years continued to pass, the Harrison family became an integral part of Prescott's community. Cole served on the town council, helping guide decisions about water rights and land management. Clara's veterinary practice was the most successful in the region, and she trained several young people in the trade, passing on the knowledge her father had given her. James grew into a serious, responsible boy with his father's work ethic and his mother's gentle way with animals. By the time he was 10, he was riding the range with the ranch hands, learning every aspect of the operation. Margaret was more bookish, always reading, always asking questions about everything. She wanted to be a veterinarian like her mother, spending hours at Clara's side during calls, absorbing everything she could. In 1890, Clara gave birth to their 3rd child, another boy they named Daniel. He was a surprise, coming 8 years after Margaret, but a welcome one. James and Margaret doted on their baby brother, fighting over who got to hold him, read to him, play with him. Daniel was a happy, easy baby who seemed to light up every room he entered. "Our family is complete," Clara said one night as she nursed Daniel, Cole sitting beside her on the bed, James and Margaret already asleep in their rooms. "3 healthy children, a home we have built together, work we love. I could not ask for more. Neither could I. Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life. That I get to wake up every morning with you beside me, that I get to watch our children grow, that I am not alone anymore. You gave me all of this, Clara. You gave me everything. We gave it to each other. That is what partnership means. Building something together, something neither of us could have created alone." Midnight lived to the remarkable age of 23, finally passing away peacefully in his sleep in the winter of 1895. They buried him on the hillside overlooking the ranch, the spot where Cole had proposed to Clara. James, now 12, helped dig the grave, tears streaming down his face. "He was the best horse that ever lived," James said as they stood around the grave. "He brought you together. Without him, none of us would be here." "That is true," Clara agreed, her own eyes wet. "He was special, right from the beginning. Some animals touch your life in ways you never expect. Midnight did that for me, for all of us. They planted a tree over his grave, a juniper that would grow strong and tall, a living memorial to the horse that had changed their lives by simply allowing himself to be vulnerable, to accept help, to trust. The turn of the century brought changes to the West. The frontier was closing, civilization spreading, the wild, lawless days giving way to something more structured and ordered. Prescott grew from a territorial capital into a proper city. New businesses opened, roads improved, telegraph lines connected them to the wider world. Cole and Clara adapted with the times. The ranch modernized with new equipment and techniques. Clara's practice expanded to include small animals as more people kept dogs and cats as pets rather than just working animals. They prospered, not wealthy but comfortable, able to send their children to good schools and save for the future. James, at 18, decided he wanted to continue the ranch, working alongside his father to learn every detail of the operation. Margaret, 16, was determined to attend veterinary school back east, to formalize the training her mother had given her. Daniel, at 10, was still figuring out his path but showed an interest in mechanics and engineering, fascinated by the machines that were beginning to transform agriculture. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1902, Cole and Clara hosted a celebration at the ranch. Half the county seemed to show up, people they had known for years, friends who had become family. There was food and music and dancing, and as Cole swung Clara around the yard in a waltz, her silver-streaked hair gleaming in the lantern light, he felt the weight of 20 years of love and partnership settle around him like a warm blanket. 20 years, Clara said, breathless from the dance. How did we get here so fast? Living, Cole said. Actually living instead of just existing. Time moves differently when you are happy. I am happy. So happy it scares me sometimes, like maybe I do not deserve this much joy. You deserve everything good in this world, Clara Harrison. You deserve happiness and love and peace. You deserve all of it, and I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it. They kissed, right there in the middle of the party, to applause and good-natured hooting from their guests. Their children pretended to be embarrassed, but Cole saw them smiling, pleased to see their parents so openly affectionate. As the party wound down and guests began departing, the family gathered on the porch, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Cole sat with his arm around Clara, James on his other side, Margaret and Daniel sitting on the steps. It was a moment of perfect peace, perfect contentment. Tell us the story again, Daniel said, as he had countless times before. About how you met. Cole and Clara exchanged smiles. It was a family tradition now. The story of Midnight and the woman who could calm him, the cowboy who fell in love, the beginning of everything they had built. Well, Clara began, it started with a horse that would not let anyone near and a cowboy who was desperate enough to ask a stranger for help. As she talked, weaving the familiar tale, Cole let his gaze drift across his family, his land, his life. He thought about the lonely man he had been 20 years ago, going through the motions, building walls to protect himself from feeling too much. He thought about Clara, running from town to town, convinced she was better off alone. And he thought about Midnight, a horse in pain who had the courage to let someone in, to be vulnerable, to trust. That trust had changed everything. It had brought Clara into Cole's life, had built this family, had created 2 decades of love and partnership and joy. All because a horse nuzzled a woman's hand, and 2 lonely people decided to take a chance on each other. The years continued to pass with the steady rhythm of ranch life. James married a schoolteacher from Prescott when he was 21, bringing his bride to live at the ranch and start a family of their own. Margaret went east for her education, as planned, spending 3 years studying veterinary medicine at a progressive school that accepted women. She returned to Arizona with her degree and a husband she had met there, a fellow veterinarian, and they set up a joint practice in Prescott that quickly became one of the most respected in the territory. Daniel, true to his early interests, went to California to study engineering. He returned periodically, full of stories about automobiles and airplanes and all the inventions that were transforming the world. Each time he visited, he marveled at how little the ranch had changed, while everything else seemed to be racing forward. "It is an anchor," Cole told his youngest son during one such visit in 1910. "The world needs places that hold steady while everything else shifts. That is what this land does. It anchors us, reminds us what matters." By then, Cole was 54, his hair more gray than brown, his hands marked with the calluses and scars of 40 years of hard work. Clara was 48, still beautiful in Cole's eyes, still moving with the grace that had first caught his attention. They had been married 28 years, and Cole loved her more deeply than he had thought possible. The kind of love that comes from truly knowing someone, from weathering storms together, from building a life brick by brick, year by year. They had 5 grandchildren by then, with more on the way. James and his wife had given them 3, and Margaret had 2. The ranch echoed with children's laughter during visits, the next generation learning to ride, to work with cattle, to understand the land in the way Cole had learned from his father, the way he had taught his children. One evening in late summer, Cole and Clara rode out to Midnight's grave. The juniper tree had grown tall and strong, its branches providing shade over the hillside. They did this every year on their anniversary, a pilgrimage to remember where it all started. They sat beneath the tree, Clara leaning against Cole's shoulder, both of them quiet and content. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we had not met?" Clara asked. "If Midnight had never gotten that stone in his hoof, if I had moved on to the next town before you found me?" "I try not to," Cole admitted. "It is too frightening to imagine. I would probably still be alone, going through the motions, half alive. You saved me, Clara, just as surely as you saved Midnight. We saved each other. That is what love does. It reaches across the walls we build and says, you do not have to be alone anymore. You do not have to protect yourself from feeling. You can be vulnerable, you can trust, and it will be okay." It was more than okay. It was everything. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Somewhere below, the ranch was settling in for the evening. Cattle lowed, horses whinnied, the sounds of home, of family, of a life well lived. "I would do it all again," Clara said softly. "Every moment, every challenge, every joy, I would choose you every single time. And I would choose you. Always. Forever." They kissed, two people who had spent nearly 3 decades building a life together, and the love between them was as strong as it had been on that first day when a cowboy's horse nuzzled a woman's hand and everything changed. As they grew older, Cole and Clara began gradually handing off responsibilities. James took over more of the daily ranch operations, though Cole still rode the land regularly, unwilling to give up the work that had defined so much of his life. Clara trained younger veterinarians, passing on her knowledge and her gentle approach, though she still took calls when she was needed. They were fortunate in their health and in their longevity. By the time 1920 rolled around, Cole was 64 and Clara 58, and while they had slowed down, they were still active, still engaged with their family and community. They had lived to see Arizona achieve statehood in 1912, had weathered the upheaval of the Great War, had watched the world transform in ways they could never have imagined when they first met. But the core things remained the same. The land, the family, the love between them. On their 38th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house Cole had built had been expanded over the years to accommodate the growing family. New buildings dotted the property, housing James's family and serving various ranch functions. The operation was much larger than it had been in 1882, but it still felt like home, still held the spirit of the young couple who had started with nothing but hope and determination. After dinner, as 3 generations of Harrisons filled the yard with talk and laughter, Cole took Clara's hand and led her away from the crowd. They walked to the barn, to the stall where Midnight had once lived. A different horse occupied it now, one of Midnight's many descendants that had been born on the ranch over the years. "Do you remember standing here that first day?" Cole asked. "Watching you walk up to Midnight thinking you were either very brave or very foolish," Clara laughed. "I remember being terrified. I could see how aggressive he was, how much pain he was in. But I also saw something in his eyes, a plea for help underneath all that fear. I could not walk away from that. You never could walk away from anything or anyone that needed you. That is one of the things I love most about you, your capacity for compassion, for seeing past the walls people and animals build. I learned from the best. My father taught me that hurt creatures deserve patience and kindness, and you taught me that I deserved the same thing. That I did not have to keep running, keep protecting myself. That I could stay, could build a life, could let myself be loved." Cole turned to face his wife fully, taking both her hands in his. "Clara Harrison, you have given me 38 years of joy. You have given me 3 incredible children and more grandchildren than I can sometimes keep track of. You have been my partner, my best friend, the love of my life. I want you to know that every single day with you has been a gift. I would not trade a single moment." Clara's eyes glistened with tears. Even the hard times, the arguments and difficulties, especially those, because they taught us how to weather storms together. They showed us that love is not just the easy moments but also the hard work of staying, of fighting for each other, of choosing partnership even when it would be simpler to walk away. You never walked away, Clara. You stayed, and that made all the difference. They held each other in the barn, surrounded by the smell of hay and horses and all the memories that lived in this space. Outside, their family waited, the legacy of 2 people who had taken a chance on love and built something that would last for generations. As the evening wore on and the party continued, Cole found himself watching his family with deep satisfaction. James was teaching his oldest son how to rope, demonstrating the technique Cole had taught him 30 years ago. Margaret was deep in conversation with Daniel about veterinary practices and how technology was changing animal care. Clara sat with their grandchildren clustered around her, telling them stories, her face animated and beautiful in the firelight. This was what they had built. Not just a ranch or a business, but a family rooted in love and respect and hard work. A legacy that would continue long after Cole and Clara were gone. The next few years were peaceful. Cole and Clara settled into a comfortable rhythm, spending their days working at a gentler pace, enjoying their grandchildren, taking pleasure in the simple things. They would sit on the porch every evening, watching the sunset, talking about the day, about memories, about nothing and everything. In 1924, Cole fell ill. It started as a bad cold that would not clear, then developed into pneumonia that ravaged his lungs. Clara nursed him tirelessly, applying all her knowledge and skill, but at 68, Cole's body struggled to fight the infection. For 3 weeks, he drifted in and out of consciousness, and during the lucid moments, Clara was always there, holding his hand, speaking softly, reminding him of their life together. "You remember," she would say, "that first ride back to the ranch. How scared I was to let myself hope for something good. You gave me that hope, Cole. You gave me everything." "No regrets," Cole managed to say during one clear moment. "Not a single regret. Best life a man could ask for." "The best life," Clara agreed, tears streaming down her face. "Because we lived it together." Cole recovered, though he never regained his full strength. The illness aged him, leaving him frailer, more dependent on others. But his spirit remained strong, and he was determined to make the most of whatever time he had left. Clara, meanwhile, seemed to grow younger as she cared for him. She had purpose, focus, a reason to keep going. Her love for Cole had not dimmed with time or familiarity. If anything, it had only deepened, becoming the bedrock of her existence. They lived 3 more years in this fashion, Cole gradually weakening, Clara steadfast by his side. They celebrated their 45th wedding anniversary surrounded by family, a bittersweet occasion as everyone understood it might be their last. On a warm spring evening in 1927, Cole asked Clara to help him outside. He wanted to see the sunset one more time from their porch, wanted to feel the Arizona air on his face. Clara bundled him in blankets despite the warmth and settled beside him, his hand clasped in hers. They watched the sky turn colors, brilliant orange and pink and purple, the familiar show they had witnessed thousands of times together. "Thank you," Cole said, his voice weak but clear, "for walking up to that horse, for staying when you wanted to run, for loving me, for building this life with me. Thank you, Clara." "Thank you for seeing me," Clara replied, her voice breaking, "for understanding that I was as scared and hurt as midnight was, for having the patience to wait while I learned to trust, for 45 years of love. Thank you, Cole, for everything." Cole turned his head to look at his wife, and in the fading light, he saw the young woman who had approached a dangerous horse with courage and compassion. He saw every version of her she had been over their years together: nervous bride, determined business owner, loving mother, proud grandmother, faithful partner. All of her was beautiful. "I love you," he said. "Always." "Always," Clara echoed. "I love you always." Cole Harrison died that night, peacefully in his sleep with Clara beside him. He was 71 years old, and he had lived every one of those years to the fullest, especially the last 45. The funeral was the largest Prescott had ever seen. Hundreds of people came to pay their respects to a man who had been a pillar of the community, a fair employer, a good neighbor, a devoted husband and father. They buried him on the hillside next to midnight, under the juniper tree that had grown strong and tall, overlooking the land he had loved. Clara stood at the grave, flanked by her children and grandchildren, and spoke the eulogy herself. "Cole Harrison was the best man I have ever known," she said, her voice steady despite her grief. "He taught me that courage is not the absence of fear but the choice to keep going despite it. He taught me that love is built day by day, through the small acts of kindness and the big gestures of commitment. He taught me that home is not a place but a person, and he was my home for 45 years. I will miss him every day for the rest of my life, but I will not regret a single moment we had together. He gave me the greatest gift anyone can give. He taught me how to live fully, love deeply, and trust completely. And for that, I will be forever grateful." Clara lived another 12 years after Cole's death. She never remarried, though she had offers. As she told her children, you only get one great love in life, and she had had hers. Nothing else could compare. She stayed active until the very end, working with animals, teaching younger generations, spending time with her family. She became the matriarch everyone turned to for wisdom and advice. She was strong and independent, but she carried Cole with her always, in the stories she told, in the way she ran her hands along the fence he had built, in the quiet moments when she would sit on the porch and speak to him as if he were still beside her. When Clara died peacefully in her sleep in 1939 at the age of 77, they buried her next to Cole, reuniting the partners who had built such a remarkable life together. The entire family gathered on the hillside, 3 generations of Harrisons, all of them products of that moment when a cowboy's horse nuzzled a woman's hand and 2 lonely people decided to take a chance on love. The ranch continued, passed down through James and then his children. The veterinary practice carried on through Margaret's family. Daniel's children brought new innovations and ideas, keeping the family business modern and thriving. But all of them, every generation that followed, knew the story of Cole and Clara, of midnight and the miracle that started it all. They knew about the walls people build when they are hurt, and about the courage it takes to let those walls down. They knew about trust and partnership and the kind of love that grows stronger with time instead of weaker. They knew that the best things in life require risk, require vulnerability, require being brave enough to stay when running would be easier. And they knew, every single one of them, that family is built not just through blood but through choice, through commitment, through the decision to love someone completely and build a life together one day at a time. The Harrison family legacy was not just land or business or wealth, though they had those things. Their true legacy was the example Cole and Clara had set. That love is worth fighting for, that fear does not have to win, that staying is braver than running, and that sometimes the best things in life begin with a simple moment of trust, a gentle touch, a choice to be vulnerable instead of protected. On the hillside where 3 graves stood under the juniper tree, the wind whispered through the branches, carrying stories of the past into the future. The ranch stretched out below, still beautiful, still productive, still home to generations of Harrisons who knew where they came from and why it mattered. And if you listened carefully on quiet evenings, you could almost hear the sound of a horse's gentle nicker, the soft murmur of a woman's voice, the low rumble of a man's laughter. The spirits of Cole and Clara and Midnight, forever together, forever watching over the family and the land they had built with courage, hope, and love. The story of the cowboy whose horse would not let anyone near, until she walked up and it nuzzled her hand softly, became legend in Prescott and throughout Arizona. It was told and retold, each generation adding their own understanding, their own interpretation, but always keeping the core truth intact: love transforms. Trust heals. Vulnerability is not weakness but the greatest strength. And sometimes, when you are brave enough to reach out despite your fear, when you are patient enough to wait for someone to be ready, when you choose hope over protection, you discover that the best things in life were waiting for you all along, just on the other side of the walls you built to keep yourself safe. Cole and Clara Harrison had learned that lesson, had lived that truth, and had built a legacy that would endure for generations. Their love story was not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations, though it had those moments. It was about the steady, consistent choice to stay, to build, to love day after day, year after year, until 2 separate lives became so intertwined they were impossible to separate. That was the real miracle, more profound than a tamed horse or a healed wound. The miracle was 2 people who had every reason to remain alone, who had built walls around their hearts to protect themselves from more pain, choosing to tear those walls down and let each other in. The miracle was the life they built together, the family they created, the love that not only survived but thrived across 45 years of partnership, and in the end, that was what mattered. Not the hardships they faced or the challenges they overcame, but the simple fact that they faced them together. That they chose each other every single day and built something beautiful from that choice. Something that lasted not just their lifetimes but echoed forward into the future, shaping generations yet to come. The cowboy and the woman who understood hurt creatures found each other because of a horse's pain and a moment of trust. But they stayed together because of something far more powerful: the recognition that they were meant to be partners, that their lives fit together in ways that made both of them better, stronger, happier. That was the story the Harrison family told, generation after generation. And that was the legacy Cole and Clara left behind, more valuable than land or money or anything else they could have given their descendants. They left the example of a love that endured, that transformed 2 lonely people into a family, that proved walls can come down and trust can be rebuilt, and happiness is possible even after heartbreak. On the hillside in Arizona, under the wide western sky, 3 graves stood side by side. A cowboy, a woman, and the horse that brought them together. Their bodies were long since dust, but their story lived on, carried forward by all the lives they had touched, all the people who had learned from their example. And if you ever found yourself on that hillside at sunset, when the light turned golden and the air grew cool, you might feel a sense of peace settling over you like a blanket. You might understand in that moment what Cole and Clara had known. That love is the greatest adventure, that trust is the bravest act, that staying is harder than running but infinitely more rewarding. You might realize, standing there on that sacred ground, that the best things in life cannot be planned or forced or controlled. They can only be received with open hands and open hearts, with the courage to be vulnerable, with the willingness to trust even when trust feels dangerous. That was the gift Cole and Clara Harrison gave the world. Not just a successful ranch or a thriving veterinary practice, but a living example of what it means to love fully, to build faithfully, to trust completely. Their story was proof that second chances exist, that walls can come down, that fear does not have to win. And it all started with a simple moment. A cowboy desperate to help his suffering horse, a woman with the gift of understanding hurt creatures, and a stallion brave enough to drop his defenses and accept a gentle touch. From that moment, everything else flowed. A courtship and a marriage, children and grandchildren, a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. That was the power of vulnerability. That was the miracle of trust. That was love in all its complicated, beautiful, transformative glory. And that was the story of Cole and Clara Harrison, the cowboy and the woman who found each other because a horse nuzzled her hand softly, and who spent the rest of their lives grateful for that moment of grace that changed everything.